Hi, I'm Bhairavv, coming to you from the Museum of Art and Photography, Bengaluru.
And I'm Shilpa. Welcome to Art Sparks.
For this season of Art Sparks, I was asked to choose 8 objects from the map collection that I was really curious about.
And today, we're really excited to be talking about this super intriguing work from the museum's collection.
Before we go into the content of the photograph, I'd like to talk about how the photo looks, the style of the photograph. It strikes me a lot how it looks from the early 1900s, what with like the black and white look, the shoes, the jewelry, the table, the ornaments, everything. It looks like from like the early 1900s, which is what I thought. But when I looked at the site and like looked at this photograph there, I found that the photograph was taken in 2010, which I was not sure why, but like when I thought of it, maybe the person purposefully made it look like that.
Yeah.
For like some sort of a reason.
That's exactly right, and that's very well observed, right? Like the clothes, the bag, like you pointed out, even the pearls of it all seem like very vintagey.
Right.
And this is a choice that the artist has made. So photographers do choose to shoot in black and white for different stylistic reasons. Sometimes they like the technical aspects involved. But in this case, it is driven by the content in a way. So the concept of this, the inspiration for this, for the artist came from growing up and seeing these family photographs, studio photographs from the 1900s, the 20th century, that were hanging in her grandmom's house.
Right.
And she kept coming back to the fact that the faces of the women in these photographs kind of always had no expression, right? They were really stony. And that's actually the point from which she springboarded or is responding to in this particular work. Have you seen anything like that?
Yeah, now that you mention it, I remember looking at like the olden days photographs, family photographs, and I remember the women in that, they had like a blank expression, like no expression at all. And sometimes like the younger girls, they'd like hide behind some of the adults in the photographs as well.
Yeah, it's partly, of course, photography at that time required like you to pose for like a length of time. So holding a smile for like a long period is hard. But yeah, there are also other things, other reasons where you may or may not have wanted to be in that photograph. You may not have had a choice in how you were portrayed.
Yeah.
Coming back to this one, what is the first thing you see when you look at it?
Of course, it's the hair.
Right.
Yeah.
And why do you think the artist might have done that?
To cover their face.
Yeah. So that's a result of this, right? The hair in front is covering the face. So what do you think happens when you can't see the face of the person in the photo?
Well, there's many things you can infer. So first of all, I guess you can't see the person's expression because they're covering their whole face. And another thing, which if you think about it, maybe they're just hiding because you can't see their face, but because it's like hair and it's thin, maybe they can see you.
Yeah, that's a really cool idea, right? That the person can look back at you even though you can't see them. It's not that the face is just missing or it's been blocked by something else.
There's a lot of things you could cover your face with.
Yeah, but the choice of hair is because the artist is also trying to talk about how hair can symbolize certain things. And the main idea being that like hair kind of has these two extremes, right? Like as far as associations with women go. So having really long, like thick, lustrous hair is considered very desirable. It's beautiful, it's a sign of beauty. At the same time, there is this idea that having wild hair is a sign of threat, right? Like so women who can't be tamed, who are fierce. And you see that sometimes with like goddesses. So you see this idea a lot in like popular culture, in mythologies, folktales, just stuff around. Does it remind you of something, ring a bell?
Well, I'm Tamil, and in the Tamil horror movies that we watch, you can see that often there's this ghost that comes, and they're usually like girls that wear white and cover their face with their hair in the horror movies.
Yeah, no, exactly. In fact, I would say it's not like Tamil horror cinema.
Okay.
It's pretty much all horror cinema, right? Not even Indian, just globally. There's always this like female figure wearing white, but like long hair down the front,
Yeah.
obscuring their face. And that idea, that itself, that visual is terrifying in some way, that association is also made right here.
Right. So I guess apart from being like beautiful or wild, hair can also be like eerie and mysterious then. Does that have to do with something with like the shadow in the background that does give like kind of like a shadiness to the photograph?
Yeah, I mean, you could read it in, right? It does feel, now that you mention it, kind of like this part of the photograph is getting a little eaten by the shadow.
Yeah.
Or the shadow's moving towards her, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. So what other types of works does this artist make?
So this work is by an artist called Anoli Pereira, who is a multimedia artist and works actually across different mediums. And here, in this instance, this would constitute what is known as photo performance art, where you're kind of performing in front of the camera and you're documenting that using the camera, right? This is a series of photographs called I Let My Hair Loose protest series. Obviously, the whole thing is staged, as we've been discussing. The people in the photographs are actually the artist, friends of the artist, relatives, that kind of thing.
Right. So it's like cosplay.
Kind of, a little bit, right? Like, I mean, they have obviously dressed up to reference a particular time. And all the cosplay, I guess, is more about fandom. This work is more about a commentary on something. So it's more social commentary that way.
So when I was seeing all these photographs in the website, I noticed that this was part of first the series, the protest series. But the word protest stood out to me. How is this like a protest? Because I mean, there's just taking a photograph, right? Protests would usually be like going and making a protest. So
You look like you're boxing. But I get what you're saying, right? That there isn't much of an activity that you can see. So this is actually a series, right? Like we discussed. And in some of the works, you have just a single figure. But like if you look at the one on the other side, you'll see there's a group of them, right? In fact, you'll also see on the top, there's another studio photograph. So it's a little bit like a reference within the photo.
Right.
And that's the idea here, that the artist is questioning this whole historical context in the early 20th century, where you had studio photographs that were largely being taken by male photographers, and that the women in them probably didn't have much of a choice in being there, probably didn't also have a lot of power in deciding how they were shown, right? Or how they wanted to look. And here, obviously, it's one, the idea that a woman who is looking at women, and two, also that the fact that you are no longer allowed to see them, and that choice has been taken back.
Okay. So if it's a protest, how do they give out this protest? How do they like spread this? How do they protest with this photograph?
The works are like exhibited in museums, in galleries.
Right.
And the idea is also really that the making of this and that display of this in itself is a political act, right? It's a statement, and that's the part that is the protest.
Okay.
But it raises an interesting question, right? So if you were an artist, for example, what do you think would be like political art? What do you think would be the sort of work you would do to protest?
Well, I'm not sure about the work, but how I would give it out. Maybe I'd post photos of it in maybe newspapers, or like here I'd put it up in museums, so that just people get like more of an awareness about the art.
Yeah, and some artists do, right? Like there are artists whose work is very much direct social commentary. So it's very obvious that it is about protesting something or spreading awareness, like you said, about something. So as an example, we have this artist in the map collection called Rajan M. Krishnan. And if you look at this sketch that he's done, it's very clear that this is about female infanticide. It shows these girls holding like placards, right? That say why this preference for a male child. And so that's very direct and obvious. Whereas there are always artists like this who also choose a slightly more indirect route, but also still are asking questions and kind of challenging ideas and the ways in which the world works.
Yeah, it's nice how it's put out to people and they can make their own interpretation.
Yeah.
Curious about what else I picked for the map collection? subscribe to the YouTube channel, and check out the rest of the series.
Also, follow us on Instagram and Facebook to stay regularly updated on everything that MAP is up to. And remember to check out the MAP website so that you can see more of the amazing photography collection that we have. Thanks for watching. Bye.